Hello everyone, in this tutorial I'll show you how you can create a word-by-word animation just like what we actually see in the screen right here. So let's head over to DaVinci Resolve and let's start doing this. So first I'll create a brand new project. I'll just go to File, New Project, and I'll just call that word by word and just hit create. So we can start with a brand new fresh project. Once it's done that, I'll head over to the edit page, or you can hit F5 to go to the edit page. So now that we are on the edit page, on the media pool, click on the media pool and I'll right click and I'll say new fusion composition. I'll call that WBW to stand for word by word. So now that we've done that, what we need to do is to drag this fusion composition to our timeline. I'll just drag it to the timeline and just drop it right here. So now that we have it on the timeline, what I'm going to do is to right click and say open in fusion page. This is going to open that in the fusion page. And here in the Fusion page, what I want to do is to use a text plus node. So you can hit Control Space and search for text. You'll see the text plus. Click on the text plus, and then let's just hit add for the text plus. I'm just going to hit F2 to rename that. You can rename your nodes, and I'll call that WPW. Like so. You don't really have to do that step. So let's take the output of our text node and connect that into the media out. And now that we have that, let's quickly create a text. So what I'm going to say is let's begin learning. So let's begin learning. I'm going to bump up the size a little bit and I'll set the text to Poppins. You can use any text you want. I just like Poppins, and I'll set the size to extra bold, and I'll still bump up the size again because I want it to be fully on the screen. So to actually start our word by word, what we need to do is to activate a modifier. A modifier is basically a procedural plugin that's built into DaVinci Resolve, and it's going to help us do things like animate without necessarily needing to add keyframes. So just know that the modifier is going to add an extra boost to your text. So I'll right click and I'll click on the follower modifier, and if you look at the top right, we actually have a modifiers tab created here. So what I quickly want to do is under the timing, I'm going to set the delay to 2, like so under the timing, but let's go to the transform, and this is the most important part. So under the transform and under transform, I'll click on characters and set the characters to words. Now that I've set it to words, what I'm going to do is to slide and scroll down here to the size. So what I want to do is to limit my timeline's output. So I'll click on the yellow line here and then drag that this one. All right, good, we got it. So I'll set it to about 50 frames. And if I play the animation, we just want to see that move about 50 frames for ease of access. So with that, I'll set the timeline to about, let's say 20. So with our timer here on 20, you can actually see the number here on the right. I'm going to set and enable 2 keyframes for the size. So I'll click on the first one for the X and second one for the Y. Now I'll set this back to 0. And once I've done that, I'll click this again. And for the start, I'll have to drag this timer back to 0. So now if we play this, we can actually see our words, just popping in like that. So how do we actually improve this? Because we want this to actually pop out. So to improve this, we can go back and change the range to a character range, and we could just leave the setting here. That's okay. We've set that up. So what we're going to do is to go to the settings on the main tool, not on the modifier. So click on this, and on the tools, let's go to settings, and on the settings, I want to turn on motion blur and set the quality to about 5. This is going to add a nice little motion blur. And for the text, I'll change the color to something quite interesting like yellow. And if we play this now, you can see we're adding a little bit of motion blur. Now it might be too powerful for a system, so what I suggest doing is just reducing that motion blur. So I'll set this to about 3, like so, and then leave that motion blur there. What I can also do to improve this is to click on my first WBW node and hit Control Shift Space, and let's search for a glow to add a soft glow. So I'll search for S glow and I'll click add. So now that glow is too strong. What I'll do is just drag down the gain a little bit to about 0.6. I think that's super fine. And what we can also do is to add a nice little shadow here. So I'll hit Control Space and I'll say shadow. I'm actually searching for a drop shadow. So let's click the drop shadow and click add the drop shadow here. Now it's adding it at the ending. I just want it immediately after the text. So I'll take the output from the text plus, and then I'll take the output into the input of the soft glow. And now you can see we have a nice little soft glow underneath. And to change the color, I'll just make this slightly dark like that. And just make that slightly blue, just add that effect. Now we can actually see we don't have a nice little background. So I'll show you how to add a quick background to this. So over here, let's go to the effects. So we actually go under generators. So here, if we go back to our toolbox and let's search for a solid color. Sorry, I need to go back to the search and say solid color. Let's drag a solid color to our timeline. And we want the solid color to be underneath. So here, I think I disabled that. So let's set this above. And what I'm actually going to do is to set the solid color to a slightly darker color. So we have a nice little background. We can change this to any color we actually want, but just make sure that it actually matches the text. I think this purple is doing great. I'll just drag this down a bit. So now that we've added that solid color, what we can actually do is go ahead and smooth out our animations, because our animations don't look super smooth right now. So what I'll do is to go back to the Fusion page. So I'll go back to the Fusion page and let's open up the spline editor. Now I'm going to click on WBW word by word, and I'll go over here to the zoom and I'll click on zoom to fit. Now with zoom to fit, I'll select these two sections, and this is going to represent the size X and size Y. So what we're going to do is just right click on this and go to ease and check Outback Cubic. And let's try playing the animation now. So I'll just drag this like so. Or we could just zoom out like that to get the entire extent like so. And let's play the animation and see how it looks like. So it adds a nice little bounce to it, but let's try to smooth that out by playing around with this curve. So I'll just grab this edge here and I'll drag this down over here. Click on this, make sure that handle comes out, click the white handle and just drag it down and repeat for the second one, this one. And let's just drag that to make sure they are all aligned like so. That's not really bad. And what we can also do is, after we've done this, is to go to the settings and we can use object or material, but I'll just leave it like that because that seems to be smooth. So if we go back to the edit page right now, I'll just drag this to the start and play our animation. We can see, let's begin learning. And the cool thing is we can take this, if we go back to our media pool where we have our master collection. So I'll just slide down like so. We can just drag this like so into this solid color here. And what we can do is place another one like so. And we can always change the properties. So instead of going to let's begin, if we go over here, we can change this to any other text we want. I'll get rid of the spline editor and I'll go to the tools and make sure we are on the text itself. Let's type in, let's see, have a nice day. Let's see, have a nice one, like so. And if we play that, we can actually see how it's going to start from there and just have a nice one, like so. And the cool thing is we're not limited to that. We can change the properties. If I change the color to something pink and go back to the timeline and drag this and create a copy of this and place that, I'll just quickly go over here and place that underneath. We can see we have both animations. So I'll go over here. And if I play this, we have our let's begin learning. And we're going to have our have a nice day. And this is one cool way to create, interesting talking head information where you have a solid color. Each time you have an idea, you let the idea pop up. So that's going to be it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.